Hey guys, welcome to What to Read, our fun little, cute little books podcast. And don't forget, it's R-E-I-D. See what I did there? It's like a pun. Is it a pun, Jason? Would you consider? I don't think it's a pun. I think it's not
just
the right
your last
term.
name, honey.
Oh, there you go. Sal's that too. So are you guys watching, or have you guys watched while you guys are home? Staying at home. Have you guys watched Becoming? If you haven't, you should definitely watch it. It is really good. I will warn you, you will probably cry through about the first 6 minutes of it because it is so moving. And it is the documentary on Netflix about the book tour for Michelle Obama's 38 some odd week #1 New York Times bestselling book, Becoming, of the same name. And it was produced by Barack and Michelle Obama's production company because, of course, they have this $60 million production deal with Netflix. And this is one of the some productions that they created. It is incredible. You get to hear from her mom. You get this rare audio of her mom talking because her mom really didn't give interviews. We tried to get interviews with her for years when I was at the Griot. She doesn't do interviews. You hear from her daughters. You hear from her brother. You hear from her family. It's like very personal. And you get this really sort of inside view of what it was like to be Michelle Obama. She talks about the struggle of trying to be perfect while being First Lady for 8 years. And it comes through that this lady is not a fan of politics. Those people who are like, oh, she should be the vice presidential running mate for Joe Biden. If you watch this, you will understand she's not going to do that. That is not something, she does not like politics, okay? But she does love, humanity. And you really get that through. She is an amazing person, I have to say. And if you ever got the chance to or get the chance to meet Michelle Obama, and I think all of us in the family who are lucky enough because of the job that I have to meet the Obamas, she's exactly like what you think she's like. She's literally like if your cousin just became First Lady, and she's like, oh, that's my cousin. That's the first. She's like your cousin. She's very much like your cousin. She's very normal. She's very nice. She's very friendly. She's actually a really great person. And the thing that's interesting about it is the contrast between how nice Michelle Obama is and how just consistently cool and nice she is, and how much just pure haterism she is getting, not just for the book and not just that she got for 8 years, but over this film, over Becoming. So the National Review decided that they wanted to do a review of this documentary. And the review was like, hate. Like, we're just angry, pissed off. Like frown. I can imagine them writing with like a frowny face, with just a face looking all turned down.
I hate it.
Hated it. They were so mad.
She thinks she's so privileged. I hate it.
Right. It's like, what is she so disgruntled about?
What did she ever accomplish in her life?
Exactly. That's exactly where they went. Okay, so let me just read. Permit me to just read a little tasty poo just for the people.
The glasses.
No, I gotta put the glasses on to read this. This requires the glasses on for those who are just hearing this with the audio. Just know that slide with the glasses going over my ears. This is what the National Review wrote as their review for this book, for the documentary. The cult of Michelle Obama is a puzzler. Thousands of strong, smart, independent women flock to every public appearance of and hang on every platitude of a woman whose sole notable accomplishment is her marriage. Lucking up on marrying a celebrity is not usually posited to be an aim of feminism. Can anyone name a single other exceptional or even unusual achievement? I think it was implied, the was implied in it.
Wow, did you hear the upgrade of upscale hate?
It's just so much hate. And the thing that's so funny about it is that this is exactly the same way that the National Review and other conservatives felt about Michelle Obama the whole 8 years. They could not understand why the Obamas just didn't smile and wave from the White House and just, gratitude, oh, thank you for letting us just be here. We don't want to have to legislate or govern. We just want to be thankful. That's what they wanted them to be like. They hate the fact that they were actually powerful and that they actually were there to do the actual work.
Or just modern day human beings living in this society.
Right, and also, so Michelle Obama got a lot of hate also for doing the things she did, which one of the big ones was fighting childhood obesity. So I just, you know what I decided to do, and I did this for AM Joy, but I also want to read to all of you, our friends, on what to read, just some of the accomplishments of Michelle Obama, just to answer back and clap back to our friends at our little angry friends at the National Review, because they're so unhappy. All right, so here is the clapback. Michelle Obama graduated from Princeton University as well as Harvard Law School. She was an associate at a top Chicago law firm where actually she was the supervisor over Barack Obama. That's how they met. She was an assistant to the mayor of Chicago. She was an associate dean at the University of Chicago. She was then the executive director of community affairs for the University of Chicago hospitals. And essentially in that job, by the way, she earned more than any single United States senator. She then became First Lady. As First Lady, she launched the Let's Move campaign, which I covered when I was back at the Griot. So traveled with a little 5 of us reporters that actually traveled, and we watched what she did. The partners for Let's Move, just the partners alone, included Walmart. It included Nike. Serena Williams got involved. There was actually CDC data that childhood obesity, particularly among very young children and poor kids, actually went down as a result of the work she did with Let's Move. That really helped poor kids especially. She got Rachel Ray involved. They were cooking incredibly healthy food for kids to eat in elementary school. And of course, she also launched the Be Better program to get men to be better, which some birther turned around and stole and turned into Be Best, which is actually grammatically incorrect. Okay, Be Best doesn't mean anything. That is not proper English. But anywho, that was stolen. And also, of course, the same birther plagiarized Michelle's convention speech as her very own. And of course, that's not even to include the New York Times, like 38 some odd week New York Times best-selling book. Okay, and the $60 million Netflix deal. So no accomplishments? Can I name a single other accomplishment? No, I can't name a single other accomplishment, National Review. I just named several. Be best. Be best. And of course, she was also a fashion icon, which one of the things that we documented at the Griot was that she would just wear a designer and create that designer's entire career. Jason Wu became a huge designer because she wore his dress to her inaugural, that white, beautiful white dress. She would tailor her fashion to, like, if there was Brazil was coming, let's say, or some other country was coming to the United States and coming to a state dinner, or maybe not Brazil, but any other country, she would wear designers from that country. So if Mexico was invited to a state dinner, she would find a Mexican or Mexican-American designer and wear them. So she was huge. She made it in fashion. I think part of the hate and part of the anger is that the current First Lady doesn't get the kind of love from Hollywood and the fashion world and the music world.
Maybe she should develop a personality.
Oh, that's not nice. But,
It's very true.
But, the bottom line is, I think, and I'll just end it with this, a lot of the anger of the right toward the Obamas, this whole thing, well, she's a celebrity. First of all, Donald Trump was a celebrity. So marrying a celebrity is the accomplishment of the current First Lady. She married a reality TV show star, right? And the second thing is that, so I guess, what are they mad that she didn't get a Netflix deal? That they want her to get a Netflix deal? What would it be about? And then secondly and lastly, Michelle Obama was a professional sort of working person before she became First Lady, which is unusual. She doesn't dedicate her whole life to Barack Obama. And the fact that she was able to incorporate herself into the culture and become a huge part of the culture is because liberals and liberalism is the culture. You guys can't re-win the culture wars. The culture wars are over. You lost the culture wars. The culture wars were won by the left. Hollywood loved the Obamas. They do not love the Trumps. And there's nothing you can do about that. And getting mad and hating isn't going to change it. You can't get the culture back. You lost the culture wars. All right, let's move on. Let's bring in, we have a wonderful guest today, somebody that you guys are really going to enjoy. She's a great friend, brilliant writer, terrific journalist. And so let's bring her in. Okay, you know her from Latino USA. She is a brilliant journalist. She is a thinker. She is a social commentator. Just a brilliant person. You also know her, of course, from appearances on AM Joy and other shows on MSNBC. And I know her as my friend and a brilliant writer of a fantastic new book. And the book is called Once I Was You. I want to bring in my girl, Maria Hinojosa. Maria, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling positive today.
Yeah, that's challenging in this environment.
I make a real effort at trying to do that. I mean, I think like everybody, I wake up and I'm just like, oh my God, please let it be over. Please let it be over.
Yeah.
And then you find a way to just focus on gratefulness. And then I have a little dog that I walk in, so that connects me to nature right away, which is what probably helped save me.
Absolutely, and gets you out of the house. I mean, the sort of out of the house thing is now it is a delicate operation now to be out of the house, to be outdoors, and having, you know, a reason to go out, having a pet to walk, or, you know, the occasional food run. It's sort of liberating in a way, but also a little terrifying.
Agreed. It's not the, you know, it feels like, you know, like when you have little kids and you have to get them ready to go out in the snow or the cold, and it takes so long because you got to put on the coat and then the gloves and then the hat and then the scarf and then the boots, and you're just like, and it feels like we're all that.
Yes.
Like we have to pre-plan, you know, we have to pre-plan with the mask.
Yeah.
And everything. And it's like, you know, okay, let's take pause.
Yeah.
And just at least be thankful.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the continual thing, is that we're not, you know, I'm not sick. my family is healthy.
Yeah.
I have a home. I have a job.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's a great place to transition into the book, because there is a certain sense, you know, I think, of, as you said, gratitude that we are in a position and have been blessed to be in a position where we can be at home, where we can be safe, where our families can be safe, when so many people who look like us are pushed out into the front lines. You know, they're not marching out into the front lines. They're shoved out into the front lines so that they can feed and take care of and deliver to and ensure the comfort and the ability of other people to stay home who mostly don't look like us, right? I mean, our communities, Black and brown communities, are literally doing the labor of keeping everyone else alive. And that includes disproportionate numbers of nurses. We see all these nurses. A lot of these nurses are Black and brown ladies. You know, a lot of them are immigrants.
Absolutely.
You know, and they're keeping everybody else alive.
I see them when I'm walking the dog at 7:30 in the morning, right here in our Harlem Park. Yeah. I see the nurses coming down from, I guess it's Presbyterian St. Luke's. It's the hospital right next to St. John the Divine. I see them in their scrubs. I see the people who work in the hospital. I don't know what their role are, but, you know, I remember, Joy, after 9/11, which was the story that I thought transformed my life. I know this is the story that has transformed my life. I was one of those people. I was working for CNN at the time. I was greatly impacted by the loss of 9/11, and so I did wave at the firefighters. I was that lady. I was like, hey. I say thank you to the people who I see wearing scrubs. I just walk up to them and I say, thank you for your work. I see the lady delivering the mail. I'm like, thank you so much.
Yes.
The guy driving the bus. I'm like waving to him. I'm like, thank you.
Yes. Oh, girl, I'm the lady in the Target line going, oh, thank you so much just for being here. And the checkout person is looking at me like, what's wrong with you? But I'm like, God bless you. God bless you. I want to hug them, but you can't touch anyone. But you know, you think about it. They're doing that work so we can survive.
That's exactly what it's like. And you know, you right now here in Harlem, it's very quiet, Joy. It's very quiet, which is a thing, right? Just to be in a New York City neighborhood where it's quiet in the middle of the day. We don't hear as many sirens as we did during the height of the pandemic for us. But what doesn't stop is the hum of the bicycles delivering the food. Yeah. And it's all paisanos, you know? Yep. Mostly Mexican Asian men, immigrant men delivering the food. And so, yeah, it is, you know, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you ever saw the movie A Day Without a Mexican. Did you ever see that movie? It was a fictional film that all of the people from Mexico all disappeared all at once and no one knows where they went. It's like an alien took them away. And like the whole country immediately began to like go into starvation. It really it made you understand how integral, you know, just that one group of immigrants, Mexican immigrants, are in every aspect of the American economy, how critical they are. And when they all disappeared one day for no reason, they never explained even why they disappeared, but the whole country went to shit. That's what would happen.
So that was made by Sergio Arau and Yareli Arizmendi. They're dear friends of mine. And I really think that movie needs to make a comeback right away.
Yes.
A Day Without a Mexican.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It
Must watch.
Okay, let's go into this book. Once I Was You, and you know, and I want to tell everybody, you know, as we are what to reading, you should just read anything that Maria Hinojosa ever writes, because her writing itself is so evocative and beautiful. It's so personal. One of the many things that you and I have in common, my media pal, is that both of our families got to this country around the same time. You came as an infant, and your family migrated to the United States in the 1960s. Mine did as well. And you come into a country, you know, when you come from Black and brown countries, where the myth of America is the greatness of it and the opportunity of it, but the reality is that this country doesn't necessarily appreciate you. That when you get here, you are not appreciated, and you come into that realization at some point. When did that realization hit you that, oh, okay, this is a country that it doesn't really appreciate someone like me?
I mean, when you first said that, I thought about my father, because my father was, may he rest in peace, Dr. Raul Hinojosa, and a lot of the writing actually revolved around my dad. When I was writing Once I Was You, he actually came to me a lot in this process. He passed away 5 years ago. But, you know, so Joy, here's the thing. My dad was from Tampico, Mexico, which is a small city on the Gulf of Mexico. And I mean, his family, my grandfather was kind of like a rancher. And my dad decides that he wants to become a medical doctor dedicated to research in the inner ear to help find a way for people who were deaf to be able to hear. He is doing this research work in the temporal bone, which is apparently very, very specialized. And the University of Chicago finds him and says, come work for us. And that's why my family moves to Chicago. In the transit from Mexico to Chicago, I do almost get separated from my own mother. That's part of the other revelation that happens in the telling of this book. But my dad was a kind of specialized scientist medical doctor. And yet, even though he was brought to the University of Chicago, they never gave him tenure. And I think as a little girl, I remember hearing these conversations about, and I think that was when it set in, like, wait, so even my father, this esteemed medical doctor in his white coat, you know, at the University of Chicago, they're not, and they love what he's doing, but they're still not seeing him. He's less than. And my mother, who's the kind of more agitator, I think I take after her a little bit. My father was the scientist.
Right.
My mother was the one who wanted to battle the university and just say, you deserve this, you deserve this. And I remember these conversations in the home. So you're right. As an immigrant, or the children of immigrants, you know, you are hearing, you're getting this mixed message. It's love, right? Because we love this country, right? But it's also like, wait, we don't understand. Why is this so complicated? Why?
Yeah. No, I think about every single, I went through one day and tried to go back and remember every single doctor who delivered all of our 3 kids. None of them were born in the United States. They all had very clear, distinct accents that made it very clear they immigrated to this country. You think about the medical profession, it's very immigrant. So there are people that this country wants
Correct.
And needs, but they don't really like them necessarily. It's like, we don't want to like and need you. But you open this book on that very vein, talking about, which is, first of all, this is my life, trying to find charge, trying to get a charge, trying to get my phone to charge. It's pretty much 80% of what I do other than trying to find my phone. But you're trying to like charge your phone in the airport, and you look up and you see this little girl, maybe like 10 years old, little Latina girl, and you connect with her, and you realize that she's one of these kids that both of our reporting has jarred us, I think, both in talking about these kids who are being transitioned around the country, who've come either unaccompanied or been separated from their parents by this administration, and then they're being, transmitted somewhere. and you may have this connection with her, and then you have this conversation that I love, this conversation that you have with one of the, I guess, the minders, the people that are transporting her, where you're like, I'm going to have this conversation in Spanish so that the little girl can hear me. And what did you want her to hear when when you're told you can't talk to her, you need to go to the media people, you're not supposed to talk to this little girl, but you said something that you wanted her to hear. What was that?
Well, I wanted these children, because she was one of, I think it was 8 or 10 children. I wanted them to hear that there was someone in this airport who was seeing them, who was bearing witness to what was happening, that they were not invisible to me. I didn't want to scare them, which is why I said in Spanish, solamente soy periodista, no les quiero hacer daño. I'm not here to bring you harm. I want you to know that there are people in this country who are aware of you, and they love you, and they want you to be safe. And I also said, you should have the right to speak to journalists. You should have the right to speak to journalists. If you want to, you should have that right in this country. And the title of the book comes from this realization that happened that, no, I'm not a child who came from Guatemala with her uncle from the highlands. No, that's not my experience. But I did look into her eyes, and I was trying to say, the reason why I can have this conversation with you is because I was once you in many ways. That person who looks around the country and says, what's going on here? How do I fit in? And I wanted them to know that I see them, because everybody is busy, as you know, Joy. Everybody in this country is busy trying to make these particular children invisible.
Yes.
That's why they're dressed that way. Right now, I haven't been in an airport for almost 2 months now, so I don't know, but they transport them in airports, and they have them wearing these sweatpants to make them kind of look indistinguishable. That's all part of the idea. It's to hide them in plain sight and to keep them away from us. But I am old enough now, Joy, that I know my power, and I know what I can do, and I know how to use my voice to be a little bit in your face if you're one of these kids' minders. But I also know how to use my voice to talk in a soft and loving tone so that these children who were clearly traumatized would also hear me.
Yeah. No, I can, reading this part, it just really kind of gave me flashbacks to Tornillo, when they finally let journalists go and see that camp. We were allowed to walk through, and to your very point, that's why this opening is so poignant. We were told we're not allowed to talk to the kids. We were only allowed to ask them, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está la comida? Very simple questions. How's the food? How are you? That's it. Like, you really weren't supposed to ask them anything. At one point, one journalist who did speak Spanish tried to ask one little girl a question who looked terrified. All the kids looked terrified. Yeah. I had nightmares after Tornillo, because they would look at you like, I don't know if you're coming to steal me, to save me. Are you a bad guy? Why are all these, random people, white, black, random people? I don't know who you are. They clearly hadn't really explained to them who we were. We were all journalists. And they just would stare at you with these little, and you described her eyes like being almost like a doll. And that's what they looked like they had little, beautiful little doll eyes, and they just stare at you, and they just looked lost. It was horrible. It was actually horrible. And one woman tried to ask a young woman a question, and more than how's the food, and almost got us all ejected, because they were literally gonna throw us out if anybody asked them anything else. And so you're right. But they had also laid out Tornillo with this fresh lawn to play soccer on, which was clearly put down that morning. It was obvious. Yeah. They were putting on a show.
The thing about it, Joy, is that, as we're living through this pandemic, the whole wide world altogether, and clearly not being impacted in different ways, right? It's not all equal. But one of the things that I think we can understand is childhood trauma and trauma. And so that is the thing that I noticed with these children. And I think back to my own trauma post 9/11 actually was when I went into a state of PTSD and just kind of, a lot of numbness. That was how it manifested for me.
Yeah.
Just numb. And that was the way I saw these kids, was just numb. Like the pain that they had been through had already just gotten to them to the point where it didn't make any sense for them to cry or scream or protest. And I hate to say it, but the kind of resignation of there's nothing I can do here.
Yeah.
That's that look that you saw, and please help me. And are you here to help me?
Right.
Because I don't know if I can ever trust an adult in this country ever again.
Exactly. That's right. And, I have the other friends that are fellow journalists who are of color as well, who talk about dealing with the kids when they get to the next step, and the kids that have constant nightmares, just constant waking up screaming at night. And just, you hear about it. We've almost forgotten these kids existed because now we're in pandemic, right?
Correct.
And I want to go to another chapter in the book, because I think it's important that, I like that you tell the story of the trauma of immigration. There's the genius of this country is that it does bring together people from all over the world to create one culture. But the messiness of it and the difficulty of it is that the lack of desire in the current era of this country to want the diversity and the culture and the seasoning that we put on the food, literally, because that isn't always true among everybody. But you have a chapter here called Finding My Voice, and you're talking about your own sort of transition in terms of your career and how you were able to sort of find a way to find that voice. Tell us about how did you do that? How did you find your voice?
Well, Joyce, so here's the thing. This way back when, I was the first Latina who was hired at NPR. I mean, the very, very first.
Wow.
It was 1985. And that came, so that's a long time ago,
Well,
but also...
Wait a minute, they did not, can we just pause that for a moment? They did not, let's just re-say this again. NPR did not find a way to get a Latina into the system until 1985. But go on.
Latina or Latino.
Either. Yeah. Wow. Brilliant. Mm.
And now, how do I end up doing that? It's because, my dad gave me this extraordinary privilege, and we end up growing up in Chicago on the South Side near the University of Chicago. And so I have a friend who ends up at Barnard. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that? And I come to New York and I fall in love with the city, and I end up coming to Barnard, not knowing that it was a Seven Sisters. I knew Columbia was part of the Ivy League, but at that time, Barnard only was men and women separate. So I go to Columbia Columbia University during the first week of orientation, because there's a radio station. And I was like, radio? Who knows? Maybe. And I just start doing radio there. And then within a year, I'm doing a live radio show 3 hours every week on Wednesday nights called Nueva Canción y Demás. The show is still on the air now. It's back on the air here at Columbia. So I, as a young woman in New York City in the 1980s, I begin to find my voice because it was a time of Latino kind of renaissance here in New York City. I mean, sadness and also hopefulness.
Yeah.
Remember, this was the era of the Central American refugees.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Again, right? Because we already went through this. That's the radio show that gives me a chance to develop an audience, and then people saying, we want to hear from you. And I think that was the revelation for me, was actually when, and this is part of the things that we do as journalists and as professors, is to give voice back to our audience, right? And say, but you have power too.
Yeah.
It was the audience that said, we want to hear what you have to say. And I was like, you do? And I think that was when I said, okay, well, maybe I do have a voice, and I understand my privilege. I have to use it.
Yeah. What does you talk about your experience working in mainstream media. Of course, you are founder of the Futuro music media group, so you are an entrepreneur as well. But just in working in mainstream media, what does the media get wrong about the way that they talk about our communities? What do you think that what do I'll say the collective we? What do we, the media, get wrong?
I think I would probably say that the problem is that it's looked at like this, like, oh my God, what's happening to them over there?
Yeah.
What are they experiencing, And instead of saying, wait, this is coming from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
This is us. So for example, and I applaud our colleagues. I think we have to do that. We have to applaud them for doing work, but we also understand that it's hard in the mainstream media. It's a challenge. So there has been some beautiful reporting, by the way, during this time. Really important work that has been done. But I guess, for example, just to take a little example, not to pick on the New York Times at all, but since they are the paper of record and they get a lot of things right, but some things wrong. I don't know if they have a Bronx bureau chief right now. I don't know. And so, like, it's not like you see the Bronx on the front page of the New York Times in a kind of hefty way.
Yeah.
Not just reporting about scandal or drug dealing or something, but rather the fact that the Bronx is home, or Queens are home to this, exploding economic engine of New York City.
Yeah.
Internally, the most transited cross street in New York City after Times Square is in Queens, in Flushing, on Flushing Boulevard.
Wow. So
these are communities that we need to know are not out there and things are happening over there, but rather they are us. And the way that you do that is by actually putting people in leadership who often comes from these communities. And look, again, this is all, we're part of the process, but the truth is, and we know this, and we say this lovingly, but with criticism as well, that the majority of all of the news that we consume through the mainstream media, all of it, whether it's newspaper, radio, even digitally, if it's mainstream, television, it's usually run by a white, cis, male, heterosexual of an upper class. And many of these men are my best friends. Like, we love them, like I know them, we hang out with them. But it's just that's just one perspective. Like, what would happen if Joy Reid was running the network, I decided to create my own company. So I run the company, I run the newsroom, I have a team, mostly women of color, super diverse, really POC centric. That's what we do. We run the company. And we're in the mix. Latino USA, which has been around now for 26 years, has one of the fastest growing audience. It's like the exploding audience within NPR news programs is Latino USA.
Yeah.
In the Thick, our politics podcast, is the audience just keeps trending up.
Yep. And
it's because if you look at demographics, this is an audience that needs to be represented. And of course, we can look at it through a political lens. And that's where you and I mostly spend a lot of our time talking. It's the same kind of thing. Like, do you guys not care? Like, for example, if I was the Biden campaign, I probably would have scooped up everybody from Bernie Sanders, Latino, however it was that they were incorporated. I would have hired those people in a heartbeat. I know of at least one that was not hired. So I can't say, maybe they have, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, if we were taken seriously, those things would be put on the front burner, on the front page, and not what's happening to them over there.
Yeah. Well, the politics thing, you have now tempted me to sidetrack from 1 second into politics. What do you foresee happening? We're going to do a little mini In the Thick right now with you. What is going to happen? I mean, how do you foresee this playing out? Because Black and brown communities are particularly vulnerable, not just to the usual voter suppression, the usual things that are done to reduce the power of our vote. But now you've got, COVID-19 and people being afraid and people being disproportionately being disproportionately likely to contract it, and working in fields where they're more likely to contract it. Do you foresee a sort of a free and fair election? I worry about it. Do you worry about it?
Every day, every minute. It's the constant question. I mean, I've been having this question for a long time because, what's revealed in the book, is that my first kind of confrontation politically in this country happens actually with George Wallace running for president, and just like, wait, but he hates Mexicans and Black people and Jewish people. that's the first thing. The second thing is, Richard Nixon, and outright corruption, and all of that, which now seems so tame. So I constantly ask myself, are we living? Is this a democracy? How close are we to losing it? I've spoken very publicly about, authoritarianism doesn't come with bells and whistles, and suddenly it's like, hey, you're living under authoritarianism now. But everything that we see around us is saying you're living in an authoritarian, if not plain authoritarian, on the very tip of authoritarianism, which is the antithesis of democracy.
Yeah.
So I do worry about this all of the time. And I don't know, what is the solution, because I'm not a political activist. I'm not, with the parties. And I know that there are people who are very happy about the fact that this means that there will be less people voting.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we assure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
And there is one statistic, actually, I have to find out where it originates from. Maybe it's UCLA, that says that Latinos and Latinas are actually the least predisposed to do well with mail-in ballots.
Mm.
So I don't know, but on the other hand, I don't know if this is sustainable for Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
And I think when you have elderly people losing confidence in him, it's sad, because they've been able to keep their confidence in him throughout all of this.
Yeah.
Throughout people and women being horrifically treated.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure it bodes well to him for now.
In the book, and again, the book is called "Once I Was You," and it is a gripping memoir, really. That it's sort of also a memoir of us as an immigrant-based country, and
Right.
as we know, it is brown immigration that has freaked out the people who voted for Donald Trump. Like the blacks were already here. They done brought us on over here. It's brown immigration that has made them so enraged. And so one of the things you write about in the book that I think it is very honest and I think is important is trauma. You write a lot about stuff also about, riding along with ICE, which is terrifying, just the thought of having to be anywhere near what they're doing, but about trauma. How does trauma impact immigrant communities in your view?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Joy, is that, I'm incredibly privileged. I'm, for everything, I'm a success. But in 2018, when we were hearing the voices of the babies and children and the toddlers crying because they had been ripped apart from their parents' arms, everybody felt it was, because many of us have little kids in our life in one way or another. So we all felt that trauma. But then something else happened. My mother called me, and she was the one that was crying. And what ended up happening was that my mother was triggered into remembering a story that I've told now, but I didn't relate it to the separation of children, which is that when I arrived in this country by plane from Mexico into Texas, there's a moment when the immigration agents wanted to take me. This is early 1960s. And so the fact that my mother would have been traumatized by something that happened, 50 years before, that I would remain traumatized, that's the thing that I worry about now, Joy, is that the immigrant community has lived through such an affront in terms of trauma in this country. And I would say really starting in 1996, when these laws were signed into office by Bill Clinton, intensified under George W. Bush, went on steroids under Obama, and now in insanity, levels with Donald Trump. And this is what I worry about, is how is this trauma of brown and black migrant immigrant children who are going to be raised here, what's it going to look like? And I get very, very worried, because it doesn't go away. I'm now a professor, and so I have students now who are writing about the trauma that they experienced in 2004 when they were separated by immigration agents back then. It's incredibly painful. It's shameful. They don't want to talk about it, but it's there.
Yeah.
These are students at Barnard or Columbia who have access to expressing themselves, who can write about this, who can talk about it. We did a radio piece on Latino USA about it, exactly, this story. But I just think about all the other children who become young adults who don't have access to therapy, who don't understand why they are triggered, who don't understand why they have anxiety or depression. And so, as we reimagine, as people are thinking this pandemic allows us to reimagine, I hope that we have mental health services in every square block of this country, because we're going to need it.
We are absolutely going to need it. The book is called Once I Was You. Let me hold it up. We're going to both hold ours up here. Let me hold mine up too. Yes. It is an important read. It is a definite what to read. Maria Hinojosa is brilliant. It goes on sale September 15th, but it is in pre-orders now. That means you need to get online. I mean, you're home. You might as well take out your laptop, take out your iPad, whatever it is that you use to get onto the internets, and pre-order the book right now. We want this book to be a huge success. It will be a huge success because everything that Maria Hinojosa has touched in her career has been a huge success, to be honest with you. This is a very...
thank you, my love.
Oh,
thank
absolutely.
You, Joy. We're so proud of you. We love you so much.
Oh, well, I love you right back, sister. Thank you very much, Maria Hinojosa. Be safe. Take care of yourself out there, yourself and your wonderful family. Love you, girl, and thank you so much for being here.
You too, my love. Hey, this is what I'm saying. If we have to stay indoors for an extended period of time, if we have to do this, let's just do this and be done with it. Like, I think that's how New Yorkers are like, let's just do this and stay inside for however long it takes.
Yes.
Because we do not want to repeat this. So I send love to everybody who's out there, and thank you, Joy. It's so great to see you. And I love that you're doing what to read.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, yes, take that advice. Do it as long as you got to do it, because we want to come out of this in one piece on the other side. Maria Hinojosa, thank you. Thanks again to my friend Maria Hinojosa. The book is Once I Was You. Pre-order. Make it happen, all right? And you guys, please give us a like right below. And, of course, you can share this podcast. Please subscribe to the One Mic Network. You can see all the great shows, programs, and fun stuff that we're going to have on here. And you can follow me on all my social media. You should do that, too, because why wouldn't you do it? See you guys on AM Joy as well. Take care. See you on the next one. Bye. That was the regular, calling on God, but don't nobody got a cellular. They want to grind and mainstream, either way they loving this. I got a harder job than Donald Trump publicists.